Hello, NBA fans, and welcome to another NBA Roundtable. My name is Matt Eppers. I am a digital producer at USA Today Sports, and we are back to talk playoffs. We're in the thick of the first round, and one team is already advanced. To break down some of the key storylines we're seeing so far, I'm joined by Jeff Zilgett and Mark Medina of USA Today Sports, and our friends Dwayne Rankin of the Arizona Republic, and Jim Mozarski of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. We're going to take a look at some key injuries and what they mean for a couple title contenders. We'll break down the big second round matchup in the East that everybody's been waiting for, and we'll discuss some of the young stars who have risen to the occasion so far in their first playoffs. Let's start with Anthony Davis. He's dealing with a strained groin. Mark, the Lakers weathered a long Davis injury absence during the regular season. How do you think they are approaching another potential absence now?
Well, they're bracing for the reality that it's going to be a challenge. But I think unlike the time that Anthony Davis was out, LeBron James is still going to be on the floor. There was a sample size when both of those players were out, but there was also a sample size when LeBron was able to help things along. And they went through a rough patch at the beginning of that stretch, and then they started to figure things out before all of a sudden LeBron was on the injury report. So they're mindful it's a difficult task, especially going against a Phoenix Suns team that has a lot of good depth with their youth and Chris Paul as a leader. But there is a recipe for LeBron James to be able to carry the franchise onward. But to be able to do that for the entire postseason, if it gets to that point, I think that could be a heavy task even by LeBron standards.
I think that whole idea of the short term is what Frank Vogel is facing right now. You know, you're looking at it, you're going, okay, short term, they ought to be able to get through. The problem is, who you're playing. Phoenix, obviously, Chris Paul's shoulder is getting better and better. So this short term could be elimination. If Anthony Davis isn't out there, then he can't just take those stretches of play where it just facilitating. Anthony Davis is dominating inside. So you got to see a more aggressive LeBron if they're going to advance in this short term, as we're talking about. And then if AD comes back and they get through this first round series, then they can get back to the way they have played in the past.
Jeff, how badly does it submarine the Sixers' title hopes if Embiid is out or isn't completely healthy?
Yeah, it takes a big dent out of their playoff for their championship aspirations. I mean, look, I don't know what the other panelists had as their MVP, but if he wasn't number one on your ballot, he was probably top three and then top five. And look, I know Philadelphia has some improvements on the perimeter. Ben Simmons is having a defensive player of the year type season, but without Embiid, that really damages their hopes. Now, they kept them out of that game. They were up 3-0 in that series. Losing that game was no great shakes for the Sixers. They know that they can get, game 5 and take care of it and maybe give Embiid a little bit more rest.
If Embiid is out, how much pressure does that put on Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris? What do we need to see from someone like Simmons if Joel Embiid is out for an extended period?
Well, I think we know what we're not going to see from Ben Simmons. I mean, we're not going to sit here at this point and start asking him to knock down three-pointers. But you are going to have to ask him to be a little bit more aggressive with his offense. He's already an aggressive offensive player. The best Ben Simmons is rolling downhill, and you can see how successful the Sixers are when they do that. Tobias Harris has had a really good series so far against the Wizards in totality. And so, yes, you're going to have to ask a little bit more.
It looks like we're going to get that huge second round series in the East that everyone circled when the bracket was set, Bucks versus Nets. Jim, how do you see them matching up against Milwaukee, who has a big three of sorts of its own?
It's relatively unknown, to be honest. In the 3 games they played, Kyrie Irving missed game 1. James Harden missed games 2 and 3. So, and the average margin of victory for those games was just a mere 3.6 points. So, I don't know if the Bucks really know what to expect with those 3 playing together. So, in terms of the big 3, though, I don't know. I think Giannis Antetokounmpo finally matched up on Kevin Durant in games 2 and 3. I think that's something to watch. Will Mike Budenholzer let him just go with KD like he did with Jimmy Butler in round 1? And then you have Drew Holiday, but now who's managing Kyrie Irving or James Harden. That's a really big unknown in terms of the big three going up against one another in that series.
Kevin Durant has shown what we all expected, because even though he was coming off a really tough Achilles injury, his game isn't predicated on being that explosive player. He has that, he's listed at 6'10", but he's a 7-footer. He has that length to be able to just dominate the mid-range. And, I think, at least for me, James Harden's exceeded my expectations, not necessarily with his game, but his willingness to blend his talent together. And one of the most underrated things about his game is he was always a great passer, but the question was he a consistent, willing passer? And I think here with the Nets, he's shown that. So I think really the only scenario that I see the Nets losing in a Bucks series, or even to any opponent in the Eastern Conference, is if there's some sort of injury among those three stars. You don't want to discount it because they've been dealing with it all season with overlapping ailments. But from a chemistry standpoint, I think that all three of them are going to be able to work together and have shown they can. And the defensive deficiencies aren't serious enough that it vastly outweighs, their offensive explosiveness.
Yeah, I think to me, obviously by the time they get to an Eastern Conference Finals, whether they're going to have 5-6 first round games under their belt to go with, those regular season games. So yeah, I think to me they found something in the Mark's point. It is James Harden. I think he's been the one that's been willing to facilitate, open things up, and Dwayne's point earlier about Kyrie Irving being, if he's the one who goes off or not, that Harden's really kind of the focal point there for Milwaukee and Jrue Holiday. I think that speaks to it.
Shift real quick to our last topic for this episode, and some young players that are really showing out during their first postseason. You have a guy like Trae Young, who there were some questions about whether or not he was going to be able to translate his game to the playoffs. But he's been really impressive so far in this postseason. Jeff, how has he elevated his game for the Hawks in the first round?
Well, even before Nate McMillan took over as interim coach and replaced Lloyd Pierce, Trae Young made a commitment to doing whatever it takes to win. And if that meant fewer 40-foot bombs from the jump ball circle, that was going to be the case. If he needed to work in Bogdanovich and Danilo Gallinari and John Collins into the offense a little bit more, if that meant he took fewer shots, that's certainly the case. But then let's look at post-Lloyd Pierce with Nate McMillan as the interim coach. Nate McMillan has had I don't want to say heavy-handed because that's probably not the right word, but he's had more of a direct control of calling plays and allowing Trae Young to make those plays, but within the structure of a little bit more disciplined offense. And I think that's where Trae Young has really shown some growth. Nate McMillan challenged him. You need to cut down your turnovers. You need to be a little bit more active with the guys you're getting involved. And, look, and listen to Trae Young. He was very frustrated in watching teams in the bubble last year, and he's starting to make teams pay for some of the work he's put in alongside Nate McMillan. And that's one reason I think Trae Young is playing so well right now, is that he's getting others involved and he has the shooters around him to do it.
It has been a season-long process for Trae Young, but it seemed very apparent last summer that he was very well aware of the weaknesses about him. As much as he showed a lot of promise with getting, voted in to be in the All-Star game last year, his second season, he knew that he was seen as this guy that just posted a bunch of stats that didn't mean anything. And he recalled one time how a friend was showing him some of his YouTube highlights, and he got frustrated watching him because he just felt, hey, I don't want to be this guy that's just a YouTube sensation. I want to be a player that's about winning basketball. And so I think that there's been a commitment into building off of his game, making others better. No one's ever going to equate him for being a good defensive player, but he's trying to be more open towards shedding bad habits so that he's seen as a winning player instead of a highlight reel.
But Dwayne, what have you seen from DeAndre Ayton so far? It seems like most nights he's been one of their most impactful players.
catch and finish. Like his hands are ready to finish, and he inside, like Frank Vogel said, he's finishing everything, and it's around the basket. And the thing about DeAndre Ayton and what you're seeing in him in this series, this has been a 2-year process with Monty Williams. When Monty Williams got there last year, it was a matter of, okay, DeAndre has this offensive skill set and he can shoot the ball. And then they were talking about him dribbling more and all this stuff. And then Monty Williams, they went into the lab and they just stripped all that down. So you know what? You got Chris Paul. You're going to be a pick and roll player. You're going to have your hands ready to catch and finish inside. And DeAndre Ayton has sacrificed his offensive ability, which to me, you're going to see in 2 or 3 years, him handling the ball more, him shooting more jumpers, him even extending the range out to 3. But he sacrificed that to just be an inside player and to be someone that just puts pressure on the rim, draws the defense, kick it out so Mikal, Jay, and all these other guys can shoot threes. And now what's happened in the postseason, all that sacrificing that he did is coming into play because the Suns' offense is so fluid in the sense of they can shoot threes as well as score inside that everybody's being played even. So now it's one-on-one in there. And I remember talking to DeAndre early in the season. He was waiting on the postseason because he was like, it's going to be one-on-one now. I'm going to be able to show what I have. And you're seeing it in terms of he's getting spoon-fed some of those, but some of those he's just going out and going to go get. His ability to get on the offensive glass to keep extra possessions alive, defensively, he's blocking shots, and he could be better on that, and he's going to have to be moving forward in this series. But his ability to be able to catch and finish, and then when the opportunity presents itself to be able to score, the guy is shooting a absolutely ridiculous percentage from the field. There was a point where he only had missed 7 shots in the first 3 games. And, it's incredible in terms of that sense of his ability to understand this is what my team needs and this is what I'm going to give.
Well, that, my friends, is going to wrap another NBA Roundtable. Many thanks to Mark Medina, Jeff Slogett, Dwayne Rankin, and Jim Ozarski for joining the panel today. My name is Matt Eppers. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and that you'll join us again next time. Until then, thank you so much for watching on USA Today Sports.